Hey, Michelle.
Right. Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us for this important discussion. Today, we will gather to discuss the recent Spring Branch ISD election, a pivotal moment for this diverse community and the future of education in the area. This election has further highlighted various critical issues, including fair funding for all Spring Branch ISD schools and the overall direction of educational policies in the district. I'll be joined by a phenomenal trio of Spring Branch residents who are also some of the candidates who ran for Spring Branch ISD board. As we dive into this discussion, we will consider the voter turnout, the implications of the election results on our students, teachers, and families, and we'll explore how this election and the status of the current lawsuit over at large versus single member districts may impact our schools' resources and support systems, as well as address the concerns and hopes of some of our community members. First up is the amazing Diana Martinez Alexander. You want to introduce yourself?
Yes. Hello, I'm Diana Martinez Alexander, longtime Spring Branch resident and veteran educator, proudly advocating and agitating for Spring Branch and education and other issues wherever the need arises, and continue to look forward to doing that work.
Excellent. And David Lopez.
Hi, everyone. Thanks, Michelle, for moderating tonight. I'm just excited to be here with the slate one more time. Y'all, I'm a former middle school teacher. I work in nonprofit right now, inspiring leaders across the country to advocate for their kids as former teachers themselves. Um, and I'm a three-time candidate now for Spring Branch ISD's Board of Trustees. I ran this year as a historic all or part as part of a historic all Latino Latina slate that was grounded in the vision for equity and real community representation in Spring Branch ISD. And while the outcome didn't go our way, I know the data and the turnout that will hear tonight, especially from the north side, tells a powerful story about the growing voice in our community that is hungry for representation. And I'm excited to reflect um, on the campaign and what the impact of the Elizondo versus SBISD case means for our fight, which is not over. So I'm grateful to be in conversation tonight with you all. Um, and
Excellent. Thank you, David. And then we'll hear from Patricia Cabrera, the third of this amazing trio, when she is able to get on. Right now, we're going to go back to Diana to talk
Mhm.
about some of the data behind this campaign.
Absolutely. So, we were very lucky in this effort to be joined by amazing community partners who have seen the need for greater voter turnout in Spring Branch area, specifically above I-10. And those precincts have been targeted for multiple cycles, just because we want people to have their voices heard at all levels of government, and that includes municipal elections, that includes um, the recent like HCAD, which is deals with, home property taxes in Harris County, all the way to the top of the ticket. And so Spring Branch was the board election was no different. So big shout out and big props to the Swing Left team. And I hope they're watching this evening. They really helped with gathering data on exactly which targets along and like along with other folks to make sure that we were contacting voters who maybe vote in other elections but don't often vote in the spring branch elections. And I will kind of touch on one of the pieces of why that is. The spring branch election is run by the district. And so if you look on Harris votes, usually you're able to pull up elections in which you are upcoming and pull up your ballot and get information on where to vote. But since the district itself runs that election, there's not a communication between those two entities. And so voters don't know that they're actually missing a vote. But on some of the south side areas, there are municipal elections, Piney Point, Hunters Creek, and the general memorial villages, they have their municipal elections coincide with the um, spring branch elections. So that kind of it turns out that you have like an unequal um, you know, appearance of voters and concentration of voters who participate in their electoral process and their responsibility, with the north side not having that same draw to the ballot box. So we were able to outreach to over 800 doors with canvassing efforts. And then we reached out to other doors in other precincts with lit drops, and we did phone banking in conjunction with other organizations, like the caucus did one. The Harris County Democratic Party called homes to let them know, and voters to let them know that there was an election, to get them to come out. So what that showed me is that with that information, people are interested in coming out. And then, like, I had voters talk to me specifically about texts that they got, um, not knowing that there was an election going on, but they had a text and that told them there was an election, and they came out to vote, and it was a husband, I'm sorry, a dad and a son coming out. And so I'm hoping that we continue to build that awareness and that voter information, so we can have people actually speaking up and coming out to the polls for the board election. Um, I think, like, statewide, people are understanding the relevance of these elections and how these decisions in schools are impacting their children and their communities. I think school boards are more in the news than ever before because of some of the extremist policies that they're advocating. And let me just clear some misconception here. This is not because that's what the community has asked for, right? It's what funding from the Heritage Foundation, PACs like Moms from Liberty, 1776, those entities are pushing these extremist policies. And on the whole, in Texas, that is not popular. We got a huge pushback. And maybe Michelle, you want to speak to that, because we're seeing a swinging of the pendulum, the back to normalcy. Um, but we won all four North Side precincts handily. The slate won. So that tells me that the people do want representation on the board. And that means that we gives us like that mandate from the people to keep pushing for representation. And I think there are other efforts that will continue doing that beyond the election. But I feel very hopeful about what we saw on Saturday, despite not getting the actual board seat. So I'll leave it there and see if y'all have anything else you want to add.
I agree, Diana. I think that if it had not been for the very purposefully placed uh, municipal elections, city council, and mayoral elections for the tiny villages, memorial villages, that y'all would have won. It certainly would have been a much closer election. They very purposely keep those elections in May so that there will be very low turnout, and at the same time as the various villages, city council, and mayoral elections, just to make sure that that turnout is up and they can overpower anything that comes from the north side. It is very frustrating. I can imagine for anyone that is not part of that particular demographic. David, did you have anything on that, or do we want to move along?
Yeah, just that we, since 2019, I ran for the first time in 2019, and my concession Facebook post letter that I wrote when Jay Carter Breed won was included points around representation. I talked about access to voting locations, and it has improved relatively for the north side since then, but only because our communities have been speaking up. So that's why it's so important that we continue to speak up, because if it wasn't for that, they still would have only had 3 south side early voting locations and 1 on the north side. And I think we need to continue to demand greater access. I am fully convinced after this election that the elections need to be run by Harris County. There is one, it is more expensive for our school district to run its own elections, especially when their argument is that they are able to run it in conjunction with the local municipalities and the villages, which allows them to do that. But there wasn't even an election in the villages this year. So and it's a systemic issue when it comes to access. Imagine any Spring Branch voter in that lives, in Spring Branch but works somewhere else in Harris County, and during early voting, that person, if they work downtown, they can vote downtown during early voting, and they will see their Spring Branch ballot. It's not just at these specific locations that you only have to go to springbrancisd.com to see. I don't understand the issue with increased access. Why wouldn't you want to systemize increased access to the ballot? I'm being a little facetious. I know why, because there are people and powers that be that want to suppress the vote. Because if it wasn't for this system that has been set up for decades in this district, we would have at least greater opportunity for better representation. So I'll stop there and get on all about ballot around voting access.
It's pretty easy to do. I agree. To another of Diana's points about the pendulum is moving back. Districts all over the state kicked out their extremist school board members, including several in the Houston area. Katy kicked out a couple of theirs. Fort Bend kicked out some of theirs. Things like that. So the pendulum is moving. It's moving in the right direction. We just need to move it in this district a little more, and everything's going to change. And we'll talk later about a lawsuit that may help to make that happen. For now, I would like for Patricia to introduce herself, and then you're going to talk, Patricia, about the lawsuit win and the appeal. You're muted.
I'm sorry. How are you? Good evening. I'm Patricia Cabrera, and I was the third one in the group to form this slate of candidates. The lawsuit everything was so timely, right? So the lawsuit started after Virginia Elizondo, who was a candidate from the North Side, a very, very qualified candidate, lost her second run for election. And it was so disheartening at that time because she had built up support. She had all the qualifications. She was definitely the most qualified candidate running. And I think the second election, it was incumbent, and then she was running against a new candidate also. Everything was going fine until all these life situations started, right? Well, we were caught up in the Trump wave of all of that climate. We went into COVID, and we had the controversy over wearing masks, about not having in-person education, and it just really diverted all the attention. So it was. I know several of us were so angry that there were Zoom calls everywhere, and I can't even remember how the idea came up that the only way we were going to correct this situation was to file a lawsuit against the district. So Virginia stepped up to be the plaintiff. It was not a class action suit. It had one plaintiff, and she became the face of our community on the North Side because the lawsuit was going to be against the Voting Rights Act. It had to be around a protected class. So even though there were many angry white families, white voters, they are not a protected class. So the fact that Virginia was Latina, that was what the lawsuit was written up on. And there was a lot of history. The case became a very tight case on the number of Latino candidates who have run before and have not won, the number of Latino and registered voters on this side of the district, and how we could never, there are areas on the north side of the district where if we had single member districts and not an at-large system, we might be able to elect a candidate of our choice, not necessarily Latino, but a candidate of our choice. So the lawsuit was won last, I can't remember the exact date, but it was within the last 2 weeks, right? And that just fueled us. The results of this election, I think, back up the premise for the lawsuit, and Diana has explained how we won all four schools on the north side, which is a very clear message, I would think, that the north side of this Spring Branch ISD does not feel represented by the south side candidates. So now we move forward and try to see if we can. Well, there's an opportunity to appeal, and the board on Monday voted to appeal the lawsuit. So they need to find something in the judge's statement that they take issue with, right? So that will be a big exercise. I think they've asked for an extension. The judge gave them 20 days, I think, and they asked for an extension. So they have till the first week in June, to come up with maps that have to be approved by the plaintiff, which is Virginia Elizondo. So we're hopeful, and we believe that this is the last time that we will have to elect board members against this impossible structure.
It might be a good time to show the map.
David, would you like to do that?
Yeah.
We can't hear you. It doesn't show you're muted, but we can't hear you.
Sorry, that was my bad. Yes, I said sure. We wanted to give the viewers a little quick visual here. So I'm going to show you the map of where the trustees live in the district. So currently for the sorry, just 1 second here. All right, so this on the screen here is the 24-25 SBISD board map. So before the election and currently, the new trustees have yet to be sworn in. So this is the current view of where trustees live in the district. And I want to say it's, you can overlay many different types of data over this, including access to healthcare, including income and wealth attainment, including different types of social and economic data points, and it specifically overlaps the most opportunity continues to lie on below I-10. And this is something that I've known since I moved to Houston. There's something called, if you look at research by the Kinder Institute, there is a lot of maps that you can see, and there's the Houston arrow. And the Houston arrow is this phenomenon that happens when you look at maps of income inequality, or you honestly bring up any different measure that you look at social and economic opportunity, and it is consistently related to where people live in this area. That the arrow is pretty much right south of I-10 and then goes up a little bit, but
Also environment too, like just green spaces, all the things you can think of that add to health outcomes, access to resources, that kind of thing as well.
Right. And so currently we are seeing, this is the map. Now, I wanted to show you a little bit of what could have been. This is the map if the Leaders for All slate, Diana, Patricia, and I, if we would have won. And you see a much more equal distribution of representation across the district. And this is the map with the new trustees. It has actually gotten even more concentrated around a single area in our district. So I'll talk a little bit about, I'm going to respond a little bit to some of the erroneous and interesting points that some of the trustees made around against single member districts. But one of them is that they purport to, in an at-large system, represent the entire district. When you have 5 trustees that live within probably 10, 5, 6 square miles of each other, that and it's so highly concentrated in such a wealthy area, in such a diverse district, it's very difficult to really secure representation that will lead to outcomes that are better for kids across the district. So that's just my argument. And this map is extremely concerning. So just wanted to give you that illustration around what we're looking at for the next term.
Thank you, David. It is pretty jarring to see that, especially in a district that, as you said, is as diverse as it is, and the neighborhood where that concentration is happening. Since I actually live relatively near it, is not very diverse in really any way, but certainly not economically. All right, so next topic on our agenda is Diana talking about the bond issues that were also on the ballot at the same time that these 3 amazing candidates were.
Yes, and I do want to point out that the voter results were released, the majority of the North Side schools, and then Spring Forest, and then finally Memorial and Spring Branch Middle were released. So that was the order in which everything kind of played out. And so until we saw kind of a shift with Spring Forest um, against, the slate. There was, a wider result for the other candidates, but also in terms of the bond. I saw much more dissension on the north side for the bond until those South Side numbers came in. It didn't look good for the bond. And I thought, okay, as a whole, because there were four different pieces to the bond. And the first piece was um, additions and modifications and new construction for all four high schools. And what when I sat in two different meetings, informational sessions, and one on the north side at Springwoods and one on the south side on Memorial. And I want to say that there was a very significant crowd at Springwoods High School of concerned families, of parents who had questions, and it didn't seem to me that the district was all too pleased to face those questions from the public when a lot of their concerns were legitimate. Let me explain. Springwoods has still not been rebuilt and has significant issues in terms of facilities and in terms of decay. I'm hearing of water being discolored. I remember when my daughter graduated there in 2019, there were concrete columns that were literally disintegrating at the base, and other issues with the facility. I know that they have a beautiful new library, and I brought up at this meeting, yes, they have a beautiful library, but they no longer have a librarian. And it just seemed um like out of sync with what the needs are in terms of, if we're asking for all this money, why are we not concentrating on instructional areas and getting those up to code and up to snuff? There was an issue, and this is something that Becky Downs really probably inspired her to run for office as a board member in Spring Branch, when her daughter was in the drama. They were getting ready to present Oklahoma, and there was a huge issue with the seats in the theater. Meanwhile, we have Stratford with like a top-notch professional level facility. And then at Springwoods, we have dry rotted seats, seats that are broken, where it's becoming an issue to even hold a production in the facility. So people know that, they feel that, I felt that in the room when they were presenting this, and they kept asking for a monetary breakdown of what each high school was going to get. Okay. Northbrook High School was previously promised a new weight room and some other facilities. I think there are tennis courts were going to be redone. They still are waiting, and that was promised in a previous bond, right? So I'm trying to give you some background, because the feeling is there's a lot of distrust that we're voting for these things, we're approving monies, and yet where is the result? And when we see budget cuts, we see budget cuts on the north side. So the north side is feeling some kind of way about not having representation, about not getting things for their campuses, and then also having whole campuses closed. And I'm of the mindset, because I've been in education so long, that a school forms the hub of the community, and you just rip that and close it without the full consideration of the impact on the community. And one piece of the bond, and that's I think section C, was to move the natatorium and rebuild it close to Stratford. So there were people taking issue with that because yet again, the north side is losing a resource, losing something of value in terms of an asset for the district, and then it's going southward. And they felt I felt maybe robbed or not a disservice at the very least, right? And one person asked, has a district done an economic impact study on if you move this venue where there are a lot of events and it adds revenue to the surrounding area um around my neighborhood because that's where I live. Has that been considered? And the district said no. But yet we got an 8-page fully color informational brochure on the bond so we could vote for it. I voted no on all pieces of the bond. And that seems antithetical for me as an educator because I support education. But this was not for education. I feel like it was more of a vanity project. It's on athletic facilities, it's on things that could have been done more modestly. Yes, I agree that some things needed to be updated and rebuilt and revamped, but this is not the way. And I will die on that hill. I know that David or Patricia may have something to add, but that was my impression. And I believe all pieces of the bond except for one approving Grove Stadium's reconstruction was approved. Is that correct?
Did either of you want to add something to what Diana talked about?
Yeah, I can't remember actually the one that was not funded, but I was surprised
It
that
was good.
actually passed. And um, but I think you're right. There was strong support in opposition of the bonds from the north side. But again, there was a great investment of marketing materials, put in to support the bond. So they did a good job. They did a good job of marketing that.
And I believe there was a PAC that funded the Say Yes to SBISD bond. And there were some contributors like Tom Ramsey, who is the commissioner for Precinct 3, who happens to be a civil engineer um in his previous life, I guess. So I know he has connections to construction firms. Um, but if you look at you always, follow the money, right? Where, what purpose do they have in funding this bond that really it increases taxpayers, homeowners, taxes, and we have to kind of I don't look at anything at face value anymore. It's not like they're behind it for the love of public education. I feel like there's definitely some other design um, with that. So that's again my personal view, but um, we're not making money from doing this. This is not a income driven venture. This is for organizing sake, for advocacy sake. So, it's a totally different situation.
Yeah, a lot of people may not realize that basically no elected educational governance in Texas is paid. School board, county, county Department of Education, state board of education. Some of them get a per diem for showing up to a meeting, but that's literally it. It is definitely not something where you can quit your day job. All right. David, did you talk about responses to what the current trustees are saying about why they want to keep single member districts? Or did you have anything else to say about that?
I have a lot to say about it. So please stop me, check the clock. Because folks, these my alleged representatives have some very interesting arguments, and ultimately, so we've talked about the lawsuit, but just a quick recap. Virginia Elizondo challenged an at-large method of elections in Spring Branch ISD that's been used since the 1940s. And after an entire 5-day trial, Reagan-appointed Republican judge Sim Lake held that this at-large system violates Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act of 1965. I don't know if that's the correct year, but because it cancels the voting strength of Latino residents. I think it's important that I know, like, I can get nerdy and into details about the lawsuit, but I think it's important to understand what the lawsuit is actually saying, because the trustees want you to think that it's about something else. What the judge said in his memorandum is that one, he enjoined the district from using the at-large election system after the elections that just happened, and ordered Spring Branch ISD to submit a single-member district map within 20 days. Mm-hmm. And that plan must include a Latino majority district, at least one Latino majority district, that meets a concept that's called one person, one vote. And that keeps the communities of interest. So in this lawsuit, it was the Latino community intact. So they can't gerrymander the map to split the Latino community up. So it's a very powerful decision. And there is evidence, right? The evidence showed in this lawsuit showed that across 9 contested races since 2015, Latino voters rallied behind their preferred candidates, 80% or more, while the Anglo or the white voter bloc blocked them in every race but one. Okay. And it's important to note, it's not only about the race of the candidate. Mm-hmm. Actually, it isn't in the lawsuit. It is about what is the preferred candidate by the Latino voters in the district, which honestly, a majority of them over those 8 races were white men. So, I'll use my own race as an example. I ran against Courtney Anderson in 2023. Anderson won 81% of the white vote. I won 90% of the Hispanic vote, but I still lost district-wide 67 to 33% because south of I-10 precincts carried that outcome heavily. Courtney Anderson would like to lie and say that she is the Hispanic preferred candidate based on no evidence, continually lies about that. She actually, in my opinion, perjured herself on the stand in federal court by saying that she campaigned only on the north side, spoke with Latino moms, said that Latino parents across the district believed that we were she called us community agitators, and that they were afraid of us, and that they really supported her. That is all. I'm not going to curse because I am an educator, but that is all BS, complete BS. It's misinformation being spread by an elected official in this district that she should be ashamed of herself of doing. And I will finish off with community calling the one of the group, which she was calling Somos Spring Branch community agitators, which is our group of. We are not paid by anyone. I'm sure they would love to start a rumor that we have George Soros money. Unfortunately, we don't. but calling the Latino voices that, I will say, for years, the South Side, white members in power on the South Side were begging for Latinos to speak up and get involved. And finally, they have people in our community, Latino leaders, people who taught in the community, people who live, whose kids went to Spring Branch schools, getting involved. And now our leaders are calling us community agitators, which is the language of segregationists from the 1960s. That is extremely, extremely concerning and divisive, and just it emulates the issues that are at hand with this lawsuit. Get off my soapbox a little there. So I'll finish off with, in the lawsuit, there is a requirement that a compact Latino must be able to exist, and experts drew this illustrative district, what is called a district, in the Landrum Northbrook area that is 72% Latino by voting age population. So there's also this argument, and there's been racists in the comments on Facebook recently and during the election saying that quote unquote, I won't even say the word, undocumented, they're not saying undocumented, undocumented, that the Latino community is just undocumented, so they can't even vote. That's why they don't win. That is not true. There is at least one area with 72% Latino voting age population eligible to vote. And that is the area that we are saying that they need to create a Latino majority district. There was also one argument that was interesting during the lawsuit that John Perez, the first Latino to be elected to the Spring Branch ISD school district, made, that Texas law lets voters petition for single member districts, and it requires signatures from 15% of all registered voters. I thought this was an interesting argument. I've actually not talked about this publicly, like, with a lot with people, but just to be very clear, the judge called that petition route impractical, if not impossible. We barely, in record turnout elections, which was in 2022, excuse me, we had 12% of the vote. Since then, we haven't broke that. We broke 9% maybe this year. So to expect a community to gather 15% of all registered voters is impractical, if not impossible, to quote the judge. So I'm watching my time here. I wanted to respond to some of the arguments made by the trustees in this past Monday special board meeting, because they were at best weak, but deserve a response. And I think specifically, I am caught. I'm troubled by the arguments of the first Latino trustee, John Perez, because he has been, if not the most staunch advocate for the at-large system, which is a fight of the Latino community. So he has this argument that, well, let me stop. One of the first ones is, if you lose, he says, if you lose, and he's talking about Virginia, a candidate, what makes him so angry is that if you lose, you lawyer up to change the system, and that's not how you do it. That his migrant parents did not raise him to do that. And I want to be clear that the system was not changed. This outcome is not changed because anyone lawyered up. A federal court changed it after weighing expert testimony, election statistics, and 114 pages of findings that show consistent vote dilution. And the remedy comes from a federal law called the Voting Rights Act, not from sore feelings. So it is that it's just one of his arguments that has no basis in fact. There is another argument that he makes around merit and hard work, and that those are the answers, not litigation. And this is a loved argument by the far right, and many different issues. But the reality is that individual merit cannot offset structural dilution. There is a systemic dilution of votes, and we saw individual merit did not offset the structural dilution that included that existed with in the election of Virginia and Chris Ernst. If his argument is that Virginia was not qualified to be the trustee, that is absolutely ridiculous. I would hire her as trustee way over Chris Ernst's resume. Dr. Elizondo has a doctorate, first of all, in education, which education, he even said, he said in his argument, instead of lawyering up, go educate yourself. Are you kidding me? Chris Ernst does not have a PhD. He barely has a master's in something unrelated to education, and had no experience in schools, and showed no regard to a full district, to every part of our district during his campaign. So even when Latino-backed candidates appealed to many white voters, like Virginia did in her election, they were still blocked. So merit's not the barrier, John. It's the math of an at-large voting that's the barrier. There was one more point that he made, that he said that the judge said he's not Hispanic enough. And first of all, the opinion never questions Trustee Perez's heritage. It simply records that in his 2022 race, he won 5% of the Latino vote. And that's a statistical fact. So heritage and voter preference are different things, and sounds like someone's a sore loser that feels that sore that he only got 5% of the Latino vote as the first Latino elected to the Spring Branch ISD Board of Trustees. That should send a message to him. And the biggest argument, which I want to invite Diana and Patricia here, is that single member districts will create division and pork barrel politics and backroom deals and all the like. And that harkens back to the 2022 yard signs that we saw pop across the district around don't HISD my SBISD, which many have found as a racist dog whistle. But to talk about what the court found that the illustrative district keeps neighborhoods whole and reflects an existing community where more than 85% of households speak Spanish at home. And many Texas districts already use mixed 5-2 or 7-0 maps without these doomsday scenarios that these trustees are predicting around what's going to happen when we have single member districts, because we will have single member districts in Spring Branch ISD. So
right, like here. Pasadena ISD also had a lawsuit of this nature. Richardson ISD also had a lawsuit similar to ours, and they moved to single member or a hybrid format. And guess what? They're still around and they're still educating children, and they just now have representation that more aligns with the population. And that's what we're asking for, is a seat at the table. Now, I've lived here on and off mostly since 1981, and I knew it as a child that there was something different on, the two pieces of our district. But that doesn't mean that we're not focused on the district at large. We want a rising tide lifts all boats. And if you're just looking out for those who pay taxes, pay more taxes, maybe you're concerned with how your taxes are being spent and they're not going in your neighborhood, but going in, other pieces of Spring Branch, and you're unhappy about that. That's something that you take up with your representative, but about school funding in general, but don't take it out on our community. That's, so Miss Cabrera, go ahead.
Well, there was one comment that I just wanted to kind of summarize the whole thing for me. And I heard more than one of them say it, I think. It was, why are y'all doing this? Is it about power? Like power has gone to our heads. And I really am so dissatisfied with the structure about we speak in public comment. It's not a dialogue. They go back, they discuss, they come back with their response, and there's no, this is the best opportunity we have to refute some of those statements. But I would have liked to have said to them, it is about power. Politics is about power. Having a seat at the table is about power. Surviving is about power. And the problem is that they want all the power and they don't want us to have any power. So the people on the north side, I have heard of different ethnicities talk about feeling powerless, talk about feeling like the children, like the adults are making decisions for the children. And so, yes, there's not, I don't, we cannot back away from terms that have been defined in a way to misrepresent our actions, right? One of them is we are political. Everyone should be political because that's what they exercise every day. Look at the map. You're doing a power analysis. They're all clustered in one place, and those are the children that they most advocate for, right? All we want is by asking for one seat at the table, because that may be all that we get. That is not going to dilute their power, but it's going to help us. It's going to keep us from feeling powerless because we will have a voice and we will have an opportunity to express ourselves, present our side, our perspective, and that is all we're asking for. I don't know why they're so threatened by that.
That was a very powerful conversation, and I am thrilled to have been a part of it. Thank you all. Let's go on to next steps. So, what now?
So, just real quick, I believe the lawyers for the district have asked for an additional 18 days on top of the 20 days. So there's 38 days for those maps to be created. So we would see what those look like and if they are acceptable to the plaintiff, Dr. Elizondo, and Judge Lake. So in terms of, because people are asking me, and they were asking me at the polls, when are we moving to single member districts? Like they're ready. They were excited. And I said, well, there's a process, right? But so I just wanted to relay that because I felt that people were so enthused about having representation, and that was part of the hype in terms of the excitement for our slate, is that we are the embodiment of that representation. I'm finished. Go ahead.
So I just have some call to actions for our community. Number one, join Somos Spring Branch. We, Diana, Patricia, me, the Honorable Virginia Elizondo, the Honorable in my mind, and Natalia Fernandez, all Northside. We have a Northside based Latino led nonprofit that drives voter education, issue advocacy, and we're definitely monitoring the legal issues in Spring Branch ISD. So one, sign up at somospringbranch.org, follow us on Instagram and on Facebook at Somos Spring Branch, and attend our meetings that will be posted on all socials and on the website. And then just have some like traditional, call to actions, which include one, register to vote. If you're not registered to vote, become a deputy voter registrar so you can register others to vote. New single member districts, once adopted, will rise or fall on north side turnout. So that's gonna be really important to make sure, because there is a disproportionality also on registered voters from south to north. So we need to make sure that we're prepared for those single member districts elections. It's a 1 hour training once every 2 years. So if you're out there watching this, become a deputy voter registrar. And then one personal one that I'll talk about specifically with Spring Branch is join or revive your campus PTA. Um, PTAs influence budget priorities, facilities upgrades, they influence principal hiring. It's power that's often ignored north of I-10. I am the treasurer of the Northbrook High School PTA, and we are struggling to continue. I'm currently unsure if we're going to be able to continue as a PTA next year. So um, if you're a parent in Spring Branch ISD, email your school's front office for the contact. And if no PTA exists, reach out to Somos Spring Branch. We'll walk you through how to start one. Or the Council of PTAs has amazing, uh, yeah, I think all of them are moms, Spring Branch moms who are leaders in the Spring Branch PTA, Council of PTAs, and they have a wealth of knowledge and will support you to do that.
I echo David's call to action, the joint Somos. I think one of the things I felt was in this campaign was this sense of community. I will say that for the South Side, that's what they have. Not with the same elements that we probably enjoy on the North Side, but they have this sense of community where they are there for each other. We, for whatever reason, have not had those opportunities, but join PTAs, join your civic association. If you're a homeowner in your neighborhood, step up, speak up. There's a great value and great power just in hearing your voice and allowing others to say, thank you. I was thinking the same thing, but I just was afraid to speak. And so I think we're in a movement right now on the North Side. This was a wonderful experience to see that we were standing for something and representing people. So there are great opportunities to join with others. This is not over, and we have some great things to come on the horizon.
Onward.
All right. Okay. Any last words before we sign off for the evening?
Sorry, I have one more call to action for our community. Run or recruit someone to run on the 2026 ballot. Once one single member district was set, and I'm manifesting single member districts in 2026. We need prepared candidates and essentially watchdogs on this bond that was just passed, on discipline policies that continue to affect our students of color disproportionately, on our bilingual education, and on all the other cultural war things that our new board, I'm sure, will continue to distract our district with. So
I thought of another call to action. Sorry, I thought you were done. No, we're just gonna popcorn all day. So one important issue when you said something about the transparency of the bond or how it's implemented, we need to pressure the school board to start with Springwoods High School or Northbrook High School for those athletic facilities. So I'm thinking of you, James. You're the one who brought that to my attention, but it's an important point, and it is an opportunity for the school board to show goodwill after closing 6 campuses, and I'm going to name them. We had Treasure Forest, we had Spring Shadows, we had Yes Prep at Northbrook Middle, we had KIP at Landrum, and then we also had Yes Prep at Northbrook High School. We also had Panda Path, which was an early learning facility. And then the loss of all of our librarians, now replaced with paras who don't have the same training. And I believe that's by design to kind of confuse or muddle with this book selection process in favor of, book bans and such. So we need to prioritize, and now the loss of the natatorium, right? So that facility as well. we need to prioritize our North Side high schools for these renovations and athletic facilities. So that is my call to action.
Right. Thank you all. That is a lot, but a lot of those are very easy, simple things to do. You can go to harrisvotes.org to find a training. You can do them virtually now to become a voter registrar. That's super simple. SomoSpringBranch.org. So many other things. Run for office as somebody who has and will again. I can tell you it is powerful to meet people who have so many ideas how to make the world a better place, and they come to you when you're running and you just want to take them and make them run because they have so many great ideas. um, every single one of us is capable of doing this. It is challenging. None of us here will say it isn't, but it is absolutely worth it. Um, and if you don't want to run, but you know somebody else who you think would be amazing, try and get them to run. There are so many offices, and we need to have good people who really care about the world and the future, and have empathy. We need to get them, people like that, to be running for all of these open positions and positions where there isn't a person like that running. um, does anyone have anything left to say? No. Thank you all for running, first of all, and thank you all for joining me here tonight, and for all of your words and your passion. And I'm a teacher too, so thank you so much for everything that you've tried to do for the children of Spring Branch, because they deserve um, people that look like them, um, people that grew up like them, and people who speak a home language like them, to be part of the decision making process. Um, and thank you for trying to do that and for keeping that fight alive.
Thank you.
Michelle. Thank you, Michelle.
Thank you.
Thank
All
you.
right. Good talk, y'all. Good talk. Sorry, let me just